Hello, and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm José.
And we're talking about a new David Fincher, released on Netflix, Mank, which is a biopic about the making, or the writing of the script of Citizen Kane by Herman Mankiewicz. Well, Herman Mankiewicz, as the Americans say it, and I was just saying to you, it grates, because I think it's Herman Mankiewicz. But in the film, he's Mank to everybody.
Yeah. He might be, I mean...
everyone gets to choose how to pronounce their own surname, don't they? And that's the
And
American...
there are variations, right? Because there's a famous Quebecois filmmaker, and he would pronounce his name as Mankiewicz. So, kind of maybe I am just using the same pronunciation for both. They were of German origin, so however the German pronunciation is, I suppose that would be the correct one. Yeah, well, that would be the correct one in Germany, wouldn't it? It might not be the correct one in New York.
So, because he's American.
Yeah.
So, Well, anyway, Mank.
Yeah.
That's his name. And, I was quite looking forward to this. I suppose I had a certain amount of trepidation about it, and I'm not really sure why. I like David Fincher.
I love David Fincher.
Yeah, and I trust his work, and I've just been watching, bits of Mindhunter again, and I watched The Social Network recently by chance, and, so I've been watching his stuff recently. And it's all very good, really.
It's one. I think he's a great filmmaker. He's always so imaginative, and he's so kind of conscious and punctilious about the use of image and color and mise en scène. When the camera moves, it's always for a reason. This is why I find this film so disappointing. Yeah.
So, can we read out what you wrote on Facebook?
Sure.
Would you mind?
No, go ahead.
I'll read it. I won't do an impression.
I stand by it. So.
Yeah. So. Because we watched it separately. Part of the reason that we watched it separately, I didn't tell you, but basically it was so that I could watch it on my flash new telly.
Don't think I didn't suspect that.
I really wanted to, because the new TV I just bought is got HDR as well, high dynamic range, which gives you this kind of greater range of brightnesses, so you can see details.
Oh, that would be good, because I'll ask you to comment on that.
So you can see these details in the brights and darks. Which I think the film uses very well, and it looked wonderful. So I was glad of the opportunity to sit at home and kind of bask in that.
Okay.
So you were watching it on your own as well, and then you wrote yesterday, quote, Jose Arroyo, "Maybe I'm in a bad mood, so we'll give Mank another go tomorrow. But I found the first 30 or 40 minutes today almost unwatchable, bloated and self-important, like a bad literary adaptation with too much exposition, people in situations over-explained, old men too old." And speaking in that awful sing-songy voice actors often use in period pieces, and rather smug, the introduction of Charles Lederer to the Algonquin group in Hollywood was unbearable.
Yes.
And then a conversation ensued in which a lot of people basically agreed with you.
Yes.
And I was reading that, I'd watched the film by this point, and I was reading that going, God, you're sticks in the mud. I had a lot of fun with this film.
Okay, well, that's interesting, because my friend Hasmeek said she also enjoyed it, and I was going to ask her why. Because actually, I think it's dreadful. It's not,
now you have seen the whole thing.
I have now seen the whole thing. I stand by it. I think, what I wrote on Facebook well describes what I think of the first 30 or 40 minutes. Mm-hmm. It made me believe again, in Kill the Father. Because, I've never seen anything so bad from Fincher, right? To me, it's a little bit like Almodovar's I'm So Excited, that you can't believe that this filmmaker, whom you love almost everything, did a film so crappy. And you think, is he losing touch? What's the reason that this film stands out like a sore thumb, from the rest of his filmography by its crappiness? And actually, I think the screenplay is the reason for it. Though it's not the only reason for it. I think it's a horrible screenplay.
So the screenplay was written by his dad.
Exactly.
Some years ago, and his dad died in 2003, I think. And I'm sure there have been changes and rewrites and all that kind of thing. But
he gets all credit.
Yes, it's credited to him.
So I think it's a horrible screenplay. And actually, I was watching Yuzo Kawashima's The Handsome Brute yesterday, and it's an example of the difference, of the differences between them. Mm-hmm. So Yuzo Kawashima's film begins with a mother and a father in a little apartment saying, "Oh, Mr. So-and-so is coming. Hide the good ashtray. Kind of make sure, that nothing expensive is, hide everything expensive in the flat." Yeah. And already you're beginning to think, why? What's happening? Who is this person? Why do they have to hide their riches, right? Yeah, kind of. And that's how it begins. right? So you're already in the midst of something exciting and something unfolding, and you begin with drama, right? Whereas actually with Mank, you begin with all this horrible exposition, kind of, oh, here's so-and-so, ha ha ha, right? And you're either meant to recognize the names, or in case you don't recognize the names, they give you a line to describe who the person is.
When he's being introduced to the Algonquin group.
Yeah, I think it's just awful.
Well, this kind of goes to a slightly different thing I had, which is not necessarily a problem I felt with the film, but just a kind of limitation, which is how wide do you think its reach will be? I mean, we spoke recently about the Small Axe film Lovers Rock.
Yes, which I love. It's a masterpiece.
Where I was suggesting, as good as it is, the reach of it might be quite small. And actually, that was the reason that it mostly impressed me, because this thing which I felt had a kind of limited reach made it onto the BBC, onto telly, Do you think there's something similar here where, although it didn't play to you in the way, you would have liked, you recognise the people and all that kind of thing, you know the stories, but beyond that, if you're not someone who comes to it with any particular knowledge about Kane, about the history, anything like that, or any particular interest in Hollywood, would it get you interested? Would it teach you anything?
I mean, we don't know that, right? I mean, my friend Hasmeek liking it would suggest, that it might reach people. So I think there's this assumption amongst film people like myself, that you need to know all this stuff for it to be entertaining. But, then my friend Hasmeek, who doesn't have she's a cinephile, but she doesn't have a background in film, she liked it. So maybe actually the more you know, the worse it is, because you keep finding faults,
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's an impossible thing to say, right? I suspect, and then you can convince me otherwise, but I don't see this film really working at all, right? Kind of, I don't understand even what its focus is. So on the one hand, it's about, writing the screenplay for Citizen Kane. But it's not really about that, is it? It's also about Upton Sinclair's election.
Election attempt.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what the whole thing with Hearst and Marion Davis is there to evoke. I mean, it's a nice story. Everybody, who knows the story likes it. It describes it in a way quite well. But that's not the drama of the film either. So there are all these long side things that, in some ways don't really matter to the story, right? Because if the story's about the writing and him getting credit, then actually what does it matter, that all these people, tried to stop the film? Or indeed, because the film stops where it does, then you actually don't see the drama, which is that, basically he lost his career as a result of getting the credit for this film, yeah?
Right.
It was very difficult for him to get a job afterwards. So that could have been the drama of the film, and then the presence of L.B. Mayer and Irving Thalberg and Randolph Hearst, that would make sense then, yeah, if they would be the active blockers or the people involved in the destruction of this man. But actually, that's not the drama of this film.
No, I mean, I would say even coming to
what
the film,
is the drama?
I would say that coming to the film with the assumption that it's going to be about the fight for credit on Citizen Kane is incorrect. I mean, that comes in about 5 minutes from the end, and although the film ends on it, I think that's really shonky that it kind of shows up and there's this discussion. Mank, although he has previously signed away the credit to the Mercury Theatre, now he says, no, I want the credit for this. I want to be credited as a screenwriter, and this fight ensues between he and Orson Welles. But Orson Welles has hardly been in the film up until that point, and in fact, when you have seen him, you've heard him on the phone, you've seen him once or twice, they've basically been in cahoots. Like, they've been on the same side, on the same page, going, we're going to make this film, and it's other people who are kind of saying, oh no, it's wrong, or it's too long, or you haven't done it right, whatever. They're on the same page, so that works very badly, and that's not what the film is about. So I think it's a bad way to end it. I think what the film is about the kind of machinations of power. It's essentially, so the structure of the film is in the present day, which is 1940. Is it 1940 or 1939?
It would be about 1940, yeah.
Yeah. So Mank has had this car accident. He's broken his leg. He's in bed, and he's got this secretary who he's giving dictation to, and he's got this 60 days to write the screenplay, basically, or write the first draft for Orson Welles. And so he's out in the ranch, supposedly drying out and what have you. He's an alcoholic by this point, and he's given this dictation, and she very quickly works out this is about William Randolph Hearst. Like, anyone who, in the Western world, will know this is William Randolph Hearst. So recognisable that this is who Kane's meant to be. And then he starts going into these flashbacks, and it comes up on screen, int, LB Mayer Studios, flashback 1930, whatever. Which I imagine you probably hated. I thought it was kind of fun. Once it establishes that, it keeps switching between the 1930s, which play out in chronological order, and the present day.
Yeah.
These two kind of parallel timelines. And what it's ultimately saying is all this stuff that you see in flashback is why the script is what it is today. And more importantly, why Mank is who he is and why he's the only person who could write this. That's what it's saying, right? This is his experience with William Randolph Hearst. This is his experience in the movie business. This is his experience with the powerful, particularly with L.B. Mayer.
Well, but you see, that's already all wrong to begin with, because actually it erases cinema, right? It erases Orson Welles' contributions, right? Completely, right? Which has to be wrong, right?
There's a great tweet, I think this is the time to bring this up, that I saw a few days ago before the film came out, from James Urbaniak, who is a critic in America, I think. No, he's a writer. Anyway, and he wrote on Twitter, "Is it true that Mank begins with Peter Falk reading Pauline Kael's Raising Kane to his grandson?" Raising Kane... Well, you can maybe talk about Raising Kane.
Well, I mean, kind of that's the argument, really, and that which has been disproved, and which actually I think maybe two nasty things has been said about Pauline Kael, that she plagiarized somebody's thesis and it was all wrong to begin with, and so on, right? Because Pauline Kael's argument basically was that Orson Welles was a credit hog, and that in fact, kind of, the responsibility for the greatness of Kane kind of lay in Joseph Mankiewicz's screenplay, Herman Mankiewicz's screenplay, and that hadn't been highlighted sufficiently. So that was her project about Raising Kane.
Yeah.
Right. But that has been disproven. Right?
Yeah, that's been pretty roundly discredited.
Exactly.
In the last 50 years.
But that still seems to be the argument of this film.
It very much seems to be that. And also, the question I have is, although it makes a kind of very compelling case for, if you try and detach it from actual reality just for a moment in your head and say, okay, well, let's just think it's about characters. So let's assume this character is, has all this background and was the perfect person to write it for all these reasons. You go, okay, but he is still like half the equation, right? You still need Orson Welles, who's the filmmaker, to actually do it. And the film isn't suggesting that Mankiewicz jumped on Orson Welles with this surprise screenplay about William Randolph Hearst, because right at the start, I think, right when they're on the phone, and I think it's in the trailer even, Orson Welles says to him, are you ready to go harpoon the white whale? And Mank says, call me Ahab. So clearly they are both, it's about William Randolph Hearst. He is the white whale they're talking about, and that's what they are. I think that's the undercurrent.
But if that's the case, then I actually think the film fails as well, because actually William Randolph Hearst is not given that kind of attention in the film. He's not given that kind of power. You don't see, the damage that he actually did do to American democracy. Right? He supported the fascists. So, you could have made all of that more dramatic, more vivid, more urgent, right? Instead of dissipating it all amongst L.B. Mayer and, Irving Thalberg and, all the stuff.
Well, maybe the white whale is then a bigger... maybe the white whale is bigger than that. Then maybe the white whale is the structure that I was talking about, the power structure in Hollywood that gets to kind of write these dreams, the dream factory, that at the same time is going towards its workers and saying, please, on bended knee, take half your wages for the next 8 weeks because we can't possibly function.
But the thing is, those are all different stories. So, I mean, those are all kind of, in a way, I don't know if historical facts, but they're historical incidents, let's say, right? I'm not sure how accurate the exact depiction in the film was, and, personally, I don't care. I mean, it is a drama, But dramatically, kind of those things are not kind of brought together into a drama. They're incidents that are almost kind of distinct, and I think the whole thing is too dissipated and too disjointed, really. I don't think it's really about the man, because actually you don't get to know much about the man either. And there's an interesting story to tell about Mankiewicz, right? Kind of what made him into this alcoholic, what made him into a compulsive gamer, why did poor Sarah continue to love him all the time? He's an interesting man. I don't think all those things are brought forth, and actually what you see, and this is, we should have another discussion about Gary Oldman, because, to me, I think the film also fails because of him, right? I think he is a very good actor, but to me, he's not a star. He never brings you in. And actually, you need somebody extremely charismatic, to kind of convey a character like this, and he doesn't have it. To me, he's not charismatic. he's dull, really.
I liked him a lot. I did.
Yeah.
The thing is, the film is cliche upon cliche.
Yes,
And
thank you.
I have my criticisms, but the thing is, I went with the cliches, right? I chose to enjoy it, I guess. Or like I started enjoying it, and I just didn't stop. So Mankiewicz, in the film, sees the absurdity of the system and sees the unfairnesses of it when he's taking through the new guy, I forget who it is, the guy who he introduced.
Charlie Lederer.
When he's taking him through Hollywood at the start, and particularly they go and see, as I mentioned, Louis B. Mayer asking all his employees to take a pay cut when, you know, it's absolutely obvious that he is unfair, right? He's taking advantage of his position and whatever. And then, you know, after the thing finishes, he says, "Not even the most disgusting thing I've seen today," or something like that. You know, he has this wit around him, about him, that keeps him protected from the kind of world that he's in. And then I think that turns into substance abuse. And that is a cliche. That's like straight down the line cliche. Someone protecting themselves from the world with substance abuse. And falling into it. And especially in a biopic. You see it so much in biopics where it's the person who started off all right and then they became a drug addict.
But part of the problem with this film...
But I didn't mind it. That's the thing.
I did. I mean, I suppose I expect better things.
I indulged in it, you know.
Well, I didn't. And I think the reason why is because you don't know what drives him. And actually, I think what drove Mankiewicz, is a kind of a self-loathing. Right? Like, you know, here's this man, so intelligent, so talented, so many expectations, and, you know, what did he become? He became a whore. Yeah, so, in his mind. Yeah, he was kind of, you know, he was making the big bucks, kind of producing trash, and he always saw the films as trash. Right? Kind of, you know, greatness was in literature for him and for a large part of that generation of people. Yeah, kind of maybe on the stage, certainly not on film. Right? You know, so, you know, if you would have turned this into a drama about that, about, you know, self-loathing and then maybe redemption by attacking all of this and so on. But there's no self-loathing there. You don't even know what makes him an alcoholic. Yeah, you just see almost the charm of being an alcoholic, that he's, you know, he sneaks in the alcohol and, you know, and he's basically a nice guy who's rescued all these, you know, Jews from Europe and so on. Yeah, but kind of, you know, then why is he this mess, right? And he's not even an entertaining mess. Right, like he's a charisma-free mess. So,
yeah, but I think it's not just that. It's like you do when you see him in these flashbacks, especially when he's interacting with Hearst and the sort of higher ups. You do sense this sort of pushing back when they have that discussion at Hearst's sort of palace, and everyone's sitting around and they're exchanging quips, and then the conversation turns to Upton Sinclair, who is this essentially he's like a Bernie Sanders of his day. You know, I mean, they keep throwing out words socialism, communism, and obviously the higher-ups in this party, Hearst and Mayer, he's persona non grata as far as they're concerned, disgusting, what, you know. And Mank steps up to defend him and explain the difference between socialism and communism in, you know, a kind of Bon Moe way. He says, in socialism, everyone shares the wealth, in communism, everyone shares the poverty. And I think the film has a kind of project in talking to various things about today, because that is absolutely a conversation people are having today. Socialism is like, it's been in the news basically since Bernie Sanders kind of brought it back. And you can have your argument about whether Bernie Sanders is a communist or a socialist. I think he's a capitalist who's just kind of rebranded socialism as capitalism. But it's in the news now, right? It's in the conversation now. Stuff about people in power abusing those below, not abusing in the sense of physical or emotional abuse, but I mean in economic abuse. You know, the economic abuse of the powerful over the poor. You know, that's a conversation that's very active today. The thing about fake news, the thing about the
Goebbels quote.
Yeah, well, I was going with the fake interviews that MGM put together to. I'm trying to get my words together.
To create propaganda to win the election. Perfect.
The propaganda that wins the election for whoever's standing against Upton Sinclair, and it's people lying about, you know, these stage interviews. I mean, it's impossible to miss that stuff today. In fact, it's interesting that in The Social Network 10 years ago, you know, nobody anticipated, David Fincher didn't anticipate it, but nobody else did either, that Facebook was going to be the place where fake news was kind of born in its new, you know, kind of apocalyptic form.
But, you know, to me, kind of all the things that you're saying, fine. These are all interesting areas to explore, right? The question is how the film dramatizes them. And my view is that it does so very poorly. So, you know, it's taking all of these things, right? And you could say, well, this is the setting, of the film. But, you know, kind of, these remain tangential to me,
Right.
You know, kind of.
You don't think any of these things fit together?
Well, I mean, I think they fit together to a degree in the sense that they show you Mankiewicz being honorable and chivalrous, you know, and doing the right thing at great personal cost. You know, but to me, that is kind of sanctimonious shit, really. I mean, you know, the film would have been more powerful if you'd also kind of seen him be complicit with all of that, yeah? I mean, he's somebody who wormed himself into this world. He was the highest paid screenwriter of his day. You know, you don't get to be that if you just continuously insult everybody in power, right? So kind of things don't make sense. And actually, they don't make sense emotionally, right? To have like a declining alcoholic kind of be the voice of reason without seeing him struggling with his own demons, you know, is a major dramatic lack. I mean, you know, the source of drama is that conflict, right? And actually, you never examine his own interiority. You know, it's almost like he might be an alcoholic and he might be weak, but he's always doing the right thing at personal cost. I mean, come on.
No, I think that's
like
true.
that?
The film doesn't go to great pains to do that, and I think there are places I can read into it, but it doesn't seem like it's as central to the film as it should be. Essential to, or it doesn't feel like the film wants it to be as important as it is. It doesn't matter to the film really very much. I thought it was kind of interesting, the scene where he's been shown the fake newsreels, the fake interviews, and he goes and he immediately realises this is going to cost Upton Sinclair the election and it's wrong, and he goes to Irving Thalberg to confront him about them, and they have this discussion, and then Irving Thalberg says something like, "You might make a difference if you'd ever given it the office," something like that, right? Basically saying you talk the talk, but you don't actually do anything.
Well, I think the argument there is that he's so sneery and sarcastic and so on that he's never tested himself as an artist. Yeah,
is that what you think it is?
I thought that's what it was about. You know, so Irving Thalberg was saying, I come here, I go to the mat for things I believe in, I fight for what I believe in, yeah, and so on. Whereas actually, you just keep an ironic distance on everything. You never have to put yourself on the line.
Yeah, well, I think we're saying the same thing there. Yeah, and because then that was interesting to me, that he then is spoken of by his nurse, who he saved from Germany, as having saved this whole town of 100 people from Germany. I don't know, that doesn't sound like it can be that true. But I know that people were sponsoring...
I'm not sure if that is true or not, but certainly other people were doing that. I know that Ben Hecht did that.
No, I read that he was, but this thing about 100 people in this one town, I'm not sure that specifically. That sounds like a bit of a...
Could be, though.
Could be. But certainly he was sponsoring people to escape Nazi Germany.
Yes.
So that then is this link, which the film doesn't point up at all, between he's been told this in his flashback, you don't do anything, and then later you see, he has done something very recently.
But those are two different things. They're not comparable. Because, for example, you know, if you're a man of conscience, and actually it doesn't cost you much to save 100 people, you know, you could save 100 people without necessarily kind of, you know, testing yourself or putting anything about yourself on the line, right? Like, I don't know, let's say if you're a billionaire, you know, and it costs like $50,000 to save, you know, a village in Bangladesh. Well,
I know what you mean, but not everyone does that. Billionaires don't tend to do that.
No, but also it's a different question if it doesn't cost you much. You know, if you risk your life to save that village, that's one thing. You know, if you give them some, what is to you, pocket change to save that village, it's a different thing altogether. Now,
I appreciate that.
I mean, you know, I don't want to minimize that. It still saves people's lives, but I think that's not what the film is talking about. And so you can't talk about it in those ways. When Thalberg says you never put yourself on the line, you're always kind of at a one remove. You know, I think, you know, those are different things.
Yeah, maybe. I felt a connection between those things.
Well, you know, I think the film would have been interesting if it would have explored that connection.
Sure.
You know, so, you know, saving 100 people in this village in Europe, you know, and then kind of treating your wife like shit for 40 years or whatever. Yeah, like kind of, you know, how does the moral, you know, kind of dimension of all of that, or the ethical dimension of that, kind of get ironed out, or does it? But the film never involves itself in any of those difficulties.
No.
You know, so I mean, I didn't like it. I didn't like the acting. I didn't like the tone. The only person in the film that I thought came across very well is Amanda Seyfried.
I thought she was great.
She's great. She looks beautiful. She's alive at every moment. You know, she brings the film to life whenever she's there. I disagree with you about the black and white. I think it was a mistake to film this particular work in black and white. When you think of Los Angeles in the 1930s, you think of palm trees and sunlight and the land of milk and honey, and kind of, those particular colors. I mean, you want to see all of that. And then kind of you could bring in the corruption and all of that, like, something like Chinatown does or whatever. But I think, black and white has particular effects that I think kind of don't do any service to the film.
I rather like the pastiche of it, and I thought there was a kind of visual wit to some of it. I mean, there's the thing about the cigarette burns that actually Fincher did back in Fight Club, and they pop up here, and they're used for a specific joke early on that they say cigarette burns, and then they show up, something like that. And the film had an energy that I really liked, especially early on. With you're going to disagree with this, and
I already do.
I can hear you. I can hear you going, oh. Right.
Exactly.
I think some of those early conversations had a screwball energy that I really liked.
I think they were attempting it.
I thought they achieved it. People always were there with exactly the right line, and they didn't hesitate. There were no pauses. It was line, and every one of them was funny.
They were all famous lines, from the period that those people had actually uttered, and I hated their use. I hated the way that they were spoken. It's also an appeal to people in the know, that you understand where the telegram comes in, They
weren't all famous lines. I'm talking also about the scene where they pitch the kind of stupid horror movie to, I forget
and Letter takes over and is giving...
Selznick, was it?
Yeah, they pitch it to Selznick.
Yeah, so those aren't famous lines. Like that's the thing they're all coming up with. I'm also talking about the scene that I mentioned at Hearst's Manor, where they're all talking about politics and so on. And again, like, lines just buzz around the room. They jump and jump.
A lot of them are. I mean, my memory's very bad, but a lot of them are famous lines. They're lines that you've read. Kind of in histories about these people,
right?
And that they're redeployed, kind of very selectively. And they are spoken like they are, So I really disagree with you about the energy. I think this film is leaden. It's completely leaden, actually. It has a particular kind of smugness, that I don't associate with Fincher. Actually, everything is too neat, everything is too pat, and there's a superior attitude, to the material, really. Kind of Mank always knows. He's always kind of perfect. He always does the right thing. So
I know what you mean about that. I pretty much agree with that. Although he doesn't do the right thing when he takes the bullets off. What's his name?
That's because he didn't know better. He tried to do the right thing. He thought he'd done the right thing. But
the second he did that, I thought you need to insist on getting the gun.
Well, I thought the same, But
again, and he's a screenwriter. He should know that there's going to be a twist.
Yeah, and Fincher's a filmmaker. He should know that an audience is going to ask those questions of something so stupid.
Yeah.
Right. So, I thought it was very unsatisfying. And what I find very interesting is, two things I find interesting, which we disagree with. But I think Gary Oldman's performance is interesting, because he's very good at conveying emotion. He's a very good actor. But I think he makes very bad choices. I think he makes very bad choices about, his voice, his speaking, the way that he reads those lines. He is very sing-songy in the beginning. And it made me understand why somebody who has been almost a star for 40 years, I mean, I remember seeing him in Sid and Nancy, how he never really became one. And I think actually, this is the role that really makes me understand why. He lacks the charisma, and also he lacks the gift of bringing the audiences into his feelings, of making, an audience side with him. He doesn't induce empathy, really. So, kind of, I thought that was interesting. This is why someone who's been almost a star, he's a name, but he's not quite a star. And he's never really quite been one. This is why. You can see it in this film.
And on the question of him being too old, I raised this with you before you'd actually started watching it. I kind of said out of the blue, do you think he's too old to play Mank? Because he's some 15 years older than the real Mankiewicz was. And then you go to 10 years before that in the 1930s, and he's really too old then.
Yeah.
I didn't mind it when he was lying in bed doing the screenplay. I kind of thought he does look broken and old, and I thought he looked alright. They kind of fit. As a younger man, he really, really does not
Absolutely
work.
not.
I mean, I felt the thing that we felt in The Irishman, where, you know, you've got these men who are playing people in their early 30s maybe, and they're trying to kick people in the streets, and you're going, but you're 70 and I can see it in how you're moving.
Yeah.
Felt it here.
And also, you know, one of the things that I really I disliked it, and it is a mistake, is this misunderstanding of the role of the screenwriter in Hollywood. So at the very beginning, when he's introduced to Albie Mayer, when Marion Davis is being burned at the stake or something, it's basically signaled that screenwriters aren't very important, right? Like Albie Mayer doesn't remember who he is. But then the film then treats him as he is this major figure in the Hollywood firmament. And even though he might have been one of the highest paid screenwriters of his time, screenwriters never held that position. Yeah, you know.
Well, actually, that's what Pauline Kael was kind of trying to address in Raising Kane, wasn't it? Really. Well, screenwriters had never been in this class of person that had they weren't part of the auteur theory.
Yeah. You know? Well, and for good reasons, you know. So, you know, she always had a thing where you could detect a Jules Furtham film and so on, which you can, right? You know, but it's one thing to see how, as an art form, film is a collaborative medium. There's no question about that, right? But also in terms of a power structure and who has the power to get things made and get things done. Kind of, you know, the writer in Hollywood has never had a very high position. So, you know, for someone who's relatively insignificant to be addressing William Randolph Hearst, I mean, one thing to address Irving Thalberg or Albie Mayer in that way, which I also think he wouldn't have, you know, but then to address William Randolph Hearst, who Albie Mayer was licking his ass because he was so powerful, right? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense at all, you know. So
it's quite a fantasy, really.
Well, it's a fantasy, but also I think I hate it because it somehow wants us to buy into the idea that resistance or rebellion has no cost attached to it. Yeah, he does these things, he talks back, and that's good. Right, whereas actually it would have been better had he talked back, and then you would see the consequences of the talking back, and then him continuing to do it nonetheless.
That's true. The most it's perceived with is a kind of, oh, that's Mank.
Yeah.
You know, that's who he is, that's what he's like, he still gets a seat at the table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, you know...
Yeah. Actually, I kind of felt Hearst came across as quite humane in the film. And maybe that's part of it, that like he doesn't really, he has the ability to mete out punishment if he wants, and he doesn't. He also really appears to love his wife. And actually, you don't see them together really, but I think you get from her that it's real, you know.
Yes.
And the way she speaks about him or behaves about him, kind of communicates that it's not just a trophy wife thing. And maybe it's just something that Charles Dance brings to it as well. And maybe it's the fact that Hearst hardly speaks, especially in the scene where Mank is drunk and walking around the dinner table and kind of essentially writing the idea for Citizen Kane, pitching Citizen Kane sort of drunkenly. Hearst just takes it to, you're not kicking him out, just takes it. He actually comes across as an alright guy.
Well, I mean, again, had the film been about him, I would actually love to see a film about them starring Dance and Amanda Seyfried. I think they were both kind of marvelous. But it's not. It's about Mankiewicz, and none of it is explored. I mean, I understand that there were incidents of mental illness in the family. That the father was very ambitious for his sons, right? I would have liked to know more the relationship, because the brothers were very close, right? And actually, Joseph Mankiewicz supported Herman's family after he died. I mean, there are all kinds of bonds, of human bonds and sacrifices and pain and stuff that the film just does not deal with, really. And also as an argument about him being the sole screenwriter, we don't get that either, because actually you never see Orson Welles around. at all, basically. So, I mean, to think about a movie, a movie is not a screenplay, yeah? If it were, you would need to make the movie. You need to see some aspect of the collaboration, even on the screenplay, and there's none of that either. So, to me, it just feels...
He's leaving Mank to it.
Yeah.
Calling in every now and again.
So the film fails as a character study, as a study of a person. It fails as an argument, for a particular kind of view of the making of this film. It fails as a depiction of, one of the central cultural milieus of 1930s American culture. Yeah, so to me, it fails on all of those levels, and it fails as a David Fincher film. I think it's his worst film.
I haven't seen Alien 3.
I love Alien 3.
Okay. I haven't seen The Game. I think Benjamin Button was pretty terrible.
Actually, I haven't seen Benjamin Button. So.
Pretty bad. In fact, my brother was saying, before he watched Mank, he was saying, I hope it's not a David Fincher and his dad thing, like Benjamin Button. And I said, oh, did he write that? He said, no, but David Fincher spoke about Benjamin Button being about his dad.
Right.
So maybe that's a relationship.
His dad clearly brings him bad luck.
Yeah. Maybe
it's a curse on his career.
I agree with a lot of what you said when you were summing up there. But what I liked was the humour, the wit, the energy that I felt it had, the performances, and the kind of, like I say, the pastiche, the certain kind of... It's an evocation of, not an era, but of an era of cinema that I enjoyed. I found it playful, and I like that.
Well, I expected more out of all of that. I mean, you are dealing with some of the most brilliant and talented people of the period. I think it all could have been more dazzling. I think actually, it's a work that would have benefited from little cameos of stars playing stars. I mean, you see Norma Shearer and you go, what? I mean, Norma Shearer is reduced to Irving Thalberg's wife, because she looks like a non-entity and she acts like a non-entity, and and yet it's a plot point, right? The reason why Marion Davis moves to Warner's is because she doesn't get Marie Antoinette because Irving Thalberg's wife gets the part. You want to see somebody with charisma and beautiful and all the things that Norma Shearer was, instead of this drab anonymous actress. I mean, I just think it's so awful on so many levels. And actually, I had to force myself to watch it, right? It's one of those things that, kind of, it wasn't a fun watch for me, kind of.
Yeah.
I thought, ugh. And then I can't turn it off because Mike is coming.
I was surprised at how much I liked it. I didn't expect to like it as much as I did, and I got on with it really, really well. And so maybe that actually goes to what you were speaking about right at the start about saying, well, who does this film speak to? Because you're someone who knows much more about the era than I do. You know the stories, you know the things that were missed out or the things that were incorrect or whatever it might be, and I don't. I have some familiarity with it, but I don't really. And nor am I taking the film as a kind of truth. Everything it tells me, I'm kind of questioning as, really, how much is that based on reality and so on. So I am taking it as characters more than historical figures. But that probably speaks to why I enjoyed it, because I didn't have all of that to go, oh, this is shit.
Well, perhaps, but I mean, I'm not too stuck on those things, right? Yeah. Actually, I was reading an article by Joseph McBride, which, I love Joseph McBride's work. But I also thought, oh my God, is this what film studies has gotten to? Because, the whole article was a little bit like the type of article that, literature professors were writing about films in the 1930s. Oh, this is not accurate. The novel's not like this, or or historians. Oh, this is so historically inaccurate. And you think, you're fucking seeing a film about Catherine the Great, so. I also don't think that, I'm not a stickler for historical accuracy in drama either.
But you're seeing the opportunities missed of the stories that could have been told, which I'm not.
But I am also talking about it as a drama, as a film, and I think it's kind of unfocused, and it's incoherent, and it lacks complexity, and it's a bit smug, So that's why I don't like it. It's not because... it doesn't fit into my idea of what Hollywood was or should be or what I've read on it and of it being inaccurate. I think it fails as a drama. It fails as a film.
Fair enough. I want to quickly say what my favourite bit was.
Okay.
Which I hope you liked, but you probably didn't. Was when L.B. Mayer takes Mank and Lederer through, and it's a shot that they're walking towards the camera, and he's talking about what the business is and why he likes it and why he's here and so on. And I thought it was great. And he talks about, he goes so quickly, but it's Arliss Howard who plays L.B. Mayer, and I think he's really good. And he says, what we sell...
I love that. I know what you're talking about.
It's
the only thing that you sell that you don't sell. Yeah. What you sell is an experience, but you don't sell the thing itself.
What people buy from us, the man still owns. Something like that. We sell a memory.
That's right.
Which is really true. And actually, it kind of made me think about vertical integration, which the studio system was, or the film business was vertically integrated at the time, and that's what later would be broken up. So cinemas own the exhibition means. Because that's really come back now. This is a Netflix film, and it's made by Netflix and shown on Netflix and is owned by Netflix, and you really don't own it. You can stream it, and you can't keep a copy.
Yeah.
Not legally anyway.
Yeah.
So that really made me think about that. Like that's really back in a big way.
Yes. Yes, and it's always kind of one of the most fascinating things about kind of film, I think. That what you buy is the experience, or actually the memory of the experience, because the experience itself instantly becomes a memory, right? Like, which is well, I suppose it's like the theater in that way. You're also just buying a memory, you're not buying a thing, right? And which has changed, because actually now you can buy the DVD or the box set, so
but also what you were saying to me recently about people going to the theatre and not buying the experience so much as buying the bragging rights to say I've been to the theatre.
Well, that is also true. Yeah, people buy different aspects of it.
Yeah.
All right, let's wrap it up here. So, A Mixed View, I think it's David Fincher's worst film, and I'm not just being hyperbolic. I really do think that. And again, I think comparable to Almodovar's I'm So Excited, where you can't believe, because I really think Fincher's a great filmmaker, so you can't believe that like somebody so gifted could do this schlock. So that's my rating. And yours, Mike?
Mine is, I understand every criticism you've made and agree with many of them, and I saw many of them while I was watching myself, and I was enjoying too much the wit and the style to let it get to me.
Right. Okay. So A Mixed View. So I suppose kind of see it if you can. It is on Netflix, and easy to see. So thank you very much for listening. We are eavesdropping at the movies, and we are on
Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube. On social media, we're on Facebook and Twitter, and the website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And we've got another 40 minutes before I even begin looking at the lamp, so we can start watching something else. But let me just check on the lamp.
I was thinking about the Orson Welles interview on Parkinson from '74 as well, which was interesting, where he talked about his daughter had bought a load of books about kind of classic Hollywood era, golden age of Hollywood, and he says, presumably looking for some vain mention of her father, and he says, I took to reading these books myself, and I started to realise that when you take out the amount of fun I had in that city, in that town, actually it hurt so many people and broke so many people and did so much damage that actually, he said, I think he said the story of that town is dirty and its record is bad.
Well, maybe,
which maybe speaks to Mank in this, because Mank is someone who, at least what the film presents, is someone who I think what it presents is someone who was broken by it, like I say, the substance abuse.
Yeah, but you see, to me, the real hero would be someone like Welles, as opposed to Mankiewicz. Why? Yeah, because Welles took all the chances, right? I mean, he offended everybody. He got blackballed. Yeah, he invested his own money into things. He had to go work in Europe, right, because of the House of Un-American Activities, right? Like, he put himself on the line constantly, right? Yeah, and suffered for it, yeah? I mean, basically, you know, he lived in Spain for 10 years, and he had to move to Italy, then, you know, he only returned to America in the 60s, right, kind of. Yeah, and, you know, he kept investing his own money, the films wouldn't get finished, yeah, like, kind of, yeah, some of them have only been released now after his death. You know, putting the money that he would make acting into, I mean, that's an artist, right?
Yeah, doing the ads, doing the P's adverts.
Exactly.
Was it? I think he said, even Lautrec painted posters.
There you go. Okay, give me my coffee.
Give me my coffee, he says.
Well, I can't. Oh, actually, maybe I can reach.
Okay. Oh, I thought you. Oh, you were talking to me. I thought you were just like saying to the air, like,
no.
Give me my coffee.
Sorry.